Blood streamed down his face as the soldier stared directly into the camera, the city burning and ruined behind him. The Koran attack had leveled New Moscow, thousands had died, but the soldier was unafraid. He smiled. "Congratulations," he said in a calm, almost mocking voice. "You have just declared war on the most deadly race in the galaxy." The connection was cut off, and Admiral Rannick of the Koran Dominion stared at the blank screen, his jaw clicking in disbelief. These primitives had just threatened them, the mighty Dominion, stretching across thousands of star systems. Hours earlier, Rannick himself had delivered an ultimatum to humanity: "You are a plague, a failure of the Union. Your race will be wiped from the face of the earth. The Dominion will act as if you never existed." For most races, such a statement meant capitulation. The Quran had already destroyed dozens of civilizations. Their navy was invincible. They expected humanity to beg for mercy, to fall to its knees. Instead, they received an answer, a single video sent to Dominion High Command. From, a battle-hardened human soldier stood before the ruined city of Novaya Moskva on the colony planet Grom 4. His armor was charred, his face stained with human and alien blood. He saw what the Quran had done and laughed. "Congratulations," the soldier said, his voice calm, almost mocking. "You have just declared war on the most deadly race in the galaxy." Then he cut the transmission. The war had begun. The Quran Dominion had been undefeated for millennia, centuries. They conquered world after world, system after system. Their biomechanical ships, partly grown, partly built, moved like predatory shadows among the stars. Species that resisted were exterminated, those who surrendered became slaves, their worlds were plundered for their resources, their populations were enslaved. The Dominion conquered the Lux Collective, a civilization of energy beings capable of bending light in just 3 days. The Tauran hierarchy, masters of genetic manipulation and armies of living weapons, fell after a week of fighting. The Nels, whose quantum technology was centuries ahead of most, were reduced to ash by the destroyers of worlds. The Korans never challenged their dominance and lived to tell the tale. Until now, humans had been nothing special to the Korans, a species that had existed for only 2 centuries in interstellar expansion. Their ships were primitive, their weapons imperfect, and their colonies scattered across several systems, easy targets. What the Korans didn't understand was that humanity had spent its entire existence fighting the elements, fighting among itself, fighting for survival in a world that had tried to destroy them again and again. Humans didn't know how to give up, they only knew how to adapt, overcome adversity, and prevail. And now, on Grom 4, the first real battle of the war had begun. The Korans had expected a quick and easy finish, instead, they found themselves in a bloody massacre. Major Carter wiped sweat from his brow, crouching behind a dilapidated barricade. The streets were littered with the bodies of Korans, their dark blue blood staining the ruins of New Moscow. The alien warriors had expected to march through the city unhindered, instead, they were being torn apart by human fighters using guerrilla tactics, improvised explosive devices, and pure rage. Music, unwavering resolve, Carter barked into his communicator. "We're still here, sir," Lieutenant Vasquez replied. Her unit was protecting the western flank, keeping the Quran from encircling them, but we need more ammunition. "Those bastards keep coming." Carter frowned. Everyone knew the truth. Thunder 4 was doomed. The Quran had sent a full invasion force. There would be no reinforcements. The Terran fleets were still mobilizing. The orders were clear: make the Quran bleed. Resist as long as possible. Hold your ground, he ordered. And if you have to retreat, be sure to leave them a small gift. Vasquez laughed dryly. "We're already setting the explosives, Major." The Quran declared war on humanity. They expected fear. They expected surrender. They got neither. Instead, they awakened something ancient and terrifying, something imprinted in human DNA since the first primitive man picked up a stone to protect his tribe. The Korans had made a fatal mistake. They had given humanity a reason to fight. Carter turned his attention to the battlefield. In the distance, Quran war machines thundered through the city, plasma cannons demolishing entire buildings. But the humans fought unfairly. They attacked from the shadows, set traps, and lured the Qurans into ambushes. Every street the Qurans captured was paid for in blood. The Qurans thought conquering humanity would be easy. They knew better. 3 days into the Battle of New Moscow, the Qurans had lost nearly 40% of their ground forces. Their commanders, accustomed to quick victories and immediate surrender, were beginning to feel disillusioned and despairing. They're changing tactics, Harper warned, his voice crackling over the comm as Carter and his squad advanced through the city's maintenance tunnels. Orbital scanners show they're retreating from the center. Carter frowned. That doesn't make sense. Just hours ago, they were advancing with all their might. Unless, Vasquez muttered, unless they planned to turn the city to glass. Silence fell over the Min Channel, where communications were paralyzed. Orbital bombardment, designed to turn the planet's surface into a mass of glass, was the Corps' favorite tactic against particularly stubborn resistance. Evacuation protocol, Carter immediately ordered all units to retreat to underground bunkers. As Carter's forces retreated into the underground GR network, the first orbital strikes hit New Moscow. The city, what remained of it, vanished in a blinding light. But the humans had already anticipated this, they were prepared. While the Corps celebrated their victory on the surface, human forces reorganized underground, and they weren't just hiding, they were planning actions across the galaxy. Word of the battle spread to other civilizations long under the control of the Corps Dominion. They watched in disbelief as the humans, newcomers to the galactic arena, fought back. And then something happened that no one expected. The Dominion High Council received a report that somehow, against all odds, a small force of humans had managed to infiltrate a Dominion battleship, slaughtering its crew and capturing the vessel. No race had ever done so before. For the first time in Corran history, they felt something unknown, fear. The Dominion battleship Barak, designed for planetary sieges, was one of the most powerful ships in the fleet. Built to be invulnerable, a symbol of Dominion supremacy. Now it belonged to humanity. On the bridge of the captured ship, Captain Daniel Rue leaned over the controls, his hands still shaking from the madness of what they had just accomplished. He surveyed his crew, Marines, engineers, and hackers, most of whom were still covered in Corran blood. "We actually did it," Lieutenant Sarah Harper whispered, her eyes wide. "Of course we did," Rue said. "Now let's make sure it was worth it." The Qurans had underestimated humanity's adaptability. They thought their ships were too complex, their systems too alien. But humans had spent centuries dismantling and studying any technology they could get their hands on. Once Harper and her technical team took control of the ship, they began to understand it. They pounced on its systems like scavengers on a fresh carcass. What they discovered inside the battle computers, the Quran, changed the course of the war forever. A brief pause in the broadcast before we continue this galactic journey. If you enjoy this unique sci-fi experience, subscribe now and, most importantly, activate the bell to prevent the YouTube algorithm from missing future videos with the most amazing sci-fi stories you won't find anywhere else. Now, back to our story. As Harper decrypted the battle computers, Corran, his eyes widened. "Captain," he called, his voice tense with excitement. "We never thought anyone could access their systems. We have everything, fleet movements, security codes, weaknesses in their defenses." Harper nodded gravely and turned to his communications officer. "Put me directly with Admiral Carey. Earth needs to know." The transmission was sent in seconds, traveling through secure channels with the human military. The response was quick, the Admiral's face. "Sorry, Commander of the Earth Defense Fleet," appeared on the main screen. Her usually cold and calculating expression changed. For a moment, her expression mingled astonishment and euphoria. "You mean," she said in a firm but sharp voice, "that you've captured a Corran battleship?" Rue chuckled. "No, we simply captured it," Admiral. We intend to use it. The Dominion was in chaos. No species had ever stolen their ships before. It was an insult, something unthinkable. The Corran High Council was distraught, their arrogant confidence shattered. But humanity wasn't about to let their humiliation end. Rather than flee with their loot, Ru and his crew turned the Barak against its former owners. As the Corran fleet approached Thunder 4, the stolen battleship opened fire. The first ship to fall didn't even activate its shields. They couldn't imagine one of their own kind attacking them. A direct hit from the Barak's forward plasma cannon completely destroyed it. The second ship responded, but it was too late. Harper had hacked the Dominion fleet's security codes, obscuring its communications for a few precious minutes. The enemy hesitated, confused, unsure if the Barak had been compromised or if it was some kind of trap. This hesitation cost them dearly. The fully mobilized human fleet emerged from hyperspace. And then, for the first time in history, the Corran fleet was ambushed on the ground. Major Carter and his resistance fighters watched as the sky erupted in flames. At first, they feared the worst, more Corran reinforcements. But then their communicator crackled, "Major, this is Captain R aboard the Barak. We're giving those bastards a taste of their own medicine." Carter looked up at the sky, watching as the once invincible Dominion forces panicked. A slow smile spread across his bloodied face. "About time," he muttered. "The impossible has happened." The Dominion had declared war on humanity, but now, for the first time, they realized their mistake. They had declared war on more than just another race, they declared war on the most lethal fighters in the galaxy. And humanity was just beginning the battle for Thunder 4. It was a massacre, but not for humans. The Corran fleet, once seemingly invincible, was shattered. The remnants of its ships retreated, broken and humiliated. On the surface, the last Corran ground forces tried to evacuate as best they could, but Major Carter and his resistance fighters were not about to let that happen. The humans had spent days suffering under Corran occupation, watching their cities burn, their people executed. Now it was time for revenge. Carter stepped over the smoking body of the Corran officer, his rifle still hot from the last shot. His communicator crackled. "Major," came Vasquez's voice, "the last of them have dug in near the spaceport and are trying to escape." Carter spat on the ground. "No way." He turned to his men, most of whom were battered and exhausted, but still standing, still fighting for real. "You think you can do this to us and then walk away like nothing happened?" He snarled, his voice shaking with rage. "You came to our world, killed our people, and now you want to run. Never. We will end this." A chorus of battle cries rang out as the humans charged forward across the galaxy. News of Thunder 4 spread like wildfire. The once invincible Corran Dominion had just suffered the unthinkable, defeat at the hands of an inferior race. For the first time in their history, they weren't destroying civilizations, they were being hunted. The stolen battleship Barak, now fully under human control, wasn't just a trophy, it was a weapon. Roar and his crew had already modified it, removing the Corran technology and replacing it with human ingenuity. The Dominion's first human-powered battleship was about to become something far more dangerous. And then came the transmission that changed everything. Admiral Carey stood before the unified military command of Earth. Her face was beamed to every colony, port, and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she said in a cold, commanding voice. "The Corran Dominion thought they could destroy us. They thought they would break us, and that silence would weigh us down. They were wrong." Something primal burned in her eyes. "We are no longer just fighting. Now we are hunting them." Across Earth and throughout the human colonies, cheers erupted. This is no longer just defense, this was a declaration of revenge. Humans were not just surviving this war, they were on the brink of victory. The first human counteroffensive into Dominion territory began with fire and fury, using the stolen Barak as a vanguard weapon. Earth forces launched a pinpoint strike directly into Coran territory. The target was Balath, a heavily fortified supply world responsible for fueling the Dominion war machine. A full-scale planetary invasion would have been suicidal. The Coran had orbital defense systems, stationed troops, and an entire fleet nearby. But humans never played fair. Instead of invading, they sent a signal. Roar Rezo's crew flew the Barak directly into the system using fake Dominion IDs. The Coran, still disorganized after their defeat at Grom 4, had no idea what awaited them. And then, when the Coran fleet finally realized who was piloting the ship, the humans flipped the final switch before the battle. Harper and his technical team had prepared the Barak for something no Dominion ship had ever been designed for, detonating its entire fuel core in a controlled chain reaction. Roar Rezo's final message to Coran Command, it was simple. "Congratulations," he said, his voice tinged with grim irony. They had just lost another planet. The Barak was on a collision course. The explosion on impact was catastrophic. The battleship, stolen from the Dominion, overloaded with enough plasma fuel to incinerate an entire fleet, detonated directly over the VTH's primary supply hubs. The shockwave paralyzed Coran operations in the sector. Fuel depots were destroyed. Supply chains were severed. The Dominion had perfected conquest for centuries, but no one had dared fight like this, and this was only the beginning. The Coran were losing more than just ships and planets, they were losing something far worse, their reputation across the galaxy. Species that had once lived in fear of the Dominion began to watch closely to see if humans could fight back, if they could compel those who had never bled. Then, perhaps, they were not alone. Rebellions began to break out on planets controlled by the Coran. Enslaved species, long resigned to their fate, began to rebel. Supply lines were sabotaged. Coran patrols set ambushes, and warlords found themselves trapped in their own territory. The Coran had ruled by fear, now they were the ones who feared. Deep within Dominion territory, the Coran High Council convened once again. Their chamber, once a symbol of pride, was now filled with anxiety. "We cannot allow this to continue," snarled Admiral Rannick, his jaws snapping in frustration. "The humans must be exterminated, every last one." "But how?" asked another council member. "They fight like we've never seen before. They sacrifice ships to destroy fleets. They don't seize supply lines, they destroy them. They don't fight for territory, they fight to kill us." The words hung in the air. The Coran had always considered themselves the galaxy's apex predators, but now they had awakened something even worse. This wasn't prey. This wasn't just an enemy. This was a species that, when pushed to its limits, becomes something monstrous. They had awakened humanity, and in desperation, the Coran had resorted to something they had never considered before, a superweapon. The decision was made. Operation Twilight was to begin immediately. The Coran were about to unleash their most closely guarded secret, a weapon they themselves deemed too terrifying even for their enemies, the stellar disintegrator. Technology stolen from an ancient, now extinct species could destabilize a star from within, causing it to go supernova far earlier than expected. The resulting explosion would destroy not only a planet, but an entire system. The target, Sol, Earth's star. Human intelligence knew nothing of this weapon or the operation. The first warning came too late. A human reconnaissance ship patrolling the edge of the solar system detected an anomaly approaching at faster-than-light speeds. The ship barely managed to issue a warning before being destroyed by its escort. Unknown ship approaching Sol, energy readings are off the charts. Communications may have been lost, but it was enough. Earth's orbital defenses were put on high alert. Admiral Carey ordered all available ships to intercept it. But as the messages came in, a frightening reality became apparent. This was not just another attack, it was an extinction-level event. In the Sol Fleet Command Center, Carey watched in disbelief. The holographic projection of the Coran ship was unlike anything they had seen before. a gigantic sphere surrounded by concentric rings, already positioned between Mercury and the Sun. What the hell is that? The science officer asked grimly. Judging by the energy readings, it appears to be some kind of stellar manipulator. If activated, it could destabilize the Sun, Kasari finished, feeling his blood run cold. Billions of lives on Earth and in the Sol colonies were in danger. All ships, concentrate as one, he ordered. Destroy it now. The human fleet reacted immediately, but Corrin had already anticipated this. The defensive armada surrounded the weapon, engaging in a desperate battle with the humans as the device moved into position. From the bridge of the USS Defiant, Carter watched as the human ships charged at Corrin. They fought with all their might, but it wasn't enough, he muttered, watching another human cruiser explode under enemy fire. The stellar disruptor has already activated, its rings spinning faster and faster, building energy to levels that will trigger catastrophic events within minutes, leading to the destruction of the Sun and Earth. Humanity will perish, and the Dominion will triumph, Captain. Harper's voice crackled over the comm. We've analyzed the weapon. There's a weak point in the aft quadrant of the shield, a structural flaw, but we'd have to get too close. Carter realized what that meant, a suicide mission. Admiral, I'm calling Carey. Request you break formation and attempt to engage the weapon at close range. There was a pause. They both understood what she was asking. Approved, Major, Carey replied, her voice tense. May God be with you. The Defiant broke from the main battle and raced toward the giant weapon. The Corrin ships immediately intercepted it. Plasma fire lit up the void. All power to forward shields. Carter ordered. Through them. The ship shuddered under the hail of fire. Systems were failing. The hull breaches were multiplying, but they continued to advance, breaking through the Corrin defenses. We won't survive, someone shouted as another impact rocked the bridge, and a low whistle sounded. Carter, the Defiant is burning, losing atmosphere, its engines are operating beyond safe limits, but... They were close, very close, and then, just as they reached firing range, a direct hit severed the ship's main power source. The weapon was disabled. The engines failed. They were dead in space, meters from their target, unable to fire. Carter stared at the massive weapon through the window, watching the energy within reach critical levels. They had failed. Humanity had failed. Corrin had won. Sir, Harper called, her voice surprisingly calm. The reactor, if we overload it. Carter looked her in the eyes. They didn't need to say anything. The Defiant's power core, if it detonated, would cause an explosion powerful enough to damage the weapon, perhaps even destroy it, but there would be no escape for the crew. Carter looked around at his men, wounded, determined, unwavering. He saw in their eyes the same resolve that had helped humanity overcome wars, catastrophes, and near extinction. Do it, he ordered as Harper initiated the overload sequence. Carter opened a communication channel to the fleet. Admiral, he said firmly, we'll stop this thing, but we won't go back. There was no trace of her usual voice in Carey's voice when she answered. Fortitude. Her sacrifice will not be forgotten. The reactor alarm echoed throughout the dying ship. 30 seconds to detonation. Carter closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of Earth, his home. Then he opened them, glaring defiantly at the weapon. See you in hell, he whispered. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. The Defiant exploded in a blinding flash, the force of its reactor creating a shockwave that struck the Star Destroyer head-on. For a moment, nothing happened, and then slowly, the enormous weapon began to crumble. Its perfectly calibrated rings shattered, its power core destabilizing. The ensuing explosion illuminated the space between Mercury and the Sun, momentarily shining brighter than Earth's own star. The Defiant fleet, caught in the blast radius, was destroyed. The few surviving ships immediately retreated, jumping into hyperspace. At that moment, humanity gained a respite, but at a terrible cost. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth mourned its heroes. The defiant sacrifice had saved billions, but the war was far from over. The starbase had been destroyed, but the Corran Dominion still ruled much of the galaxy. However, the attack had changed something. It had shown the Corran were not invincible. It had made it clear that even their most formidable weapons could be defeated, and it had made one thing clear to human leadership: this war would not end until the Dominion itself was gone. 3 weeks after the battle, Admiral Kasari stood in the command center of the moon base, studying a map of the galactic war. The Dominion still controlled thousands of worlds, and its fleets outnumbered human forces 100-fold. But war was no longer about numbers, it was about strategy, it was about fear. Kasari addressed her officers, hardened by loss, by sacrifice. "We don't need to defeat the Dominion in open warfare," she said. "We simply need to break them." A new plan began to take shape, a war not of territory, but of annihilation, to sever their supply chains, their command structure, their very belief in their own power. "We will take everything from them," she said, looking at the officers around her, the deadliest strategists humanity had ever produced. "Let's go. To show them what happens when you declare war on the most dangerous race in the galaxy." That day, Operation Guillotine was born, a plan so audacious, so insane, that no Corran admiral could have foreseen it. Instead of slowly infiltrating the Dominion's outer defenses, the humans intended to sever the beast's head. The plan was simple: strike the Corran homeworld with such force, so brutally, that their entire empire would crumble in fear. Lieutenant Harper, promoted to commander after discovering the weapon's weakness, led technical planning. Captain Rowe, who had survived the VTH by escaping in a pod before the Barak's explosion, commanded ground operations, while Anti-Carry coordinated the entire operation from the new flagship, the USS Vengeance. Preparations took months. Every available resource was devoted to the operation. Ships were refitted, weapons upgraded, and soldiers specially trained for this mission. But the most crucial element was not equipment, but information. The Corran homeworld of Kester was a fortress, the heart of an empire that had ruled undisputed for centuries, and no species had dared to attack it until now. For the operation to succeed, they needed reconnaissance, blueprints, defense maps, patrol schedules, anything that could give them an advantage. And that meant infiltration. Rohr was in the briefing room, overseeing the assembled team of saboteurs, the best agents humanity had to offer. "This mission is likely one-sided," he said bluntly. "The Dominion doesn't yet know we're hunting their homeworld. But once you set foot on Kester, the clock will start ticking." The team nodded. Everyone understood what was at stake. "Your tasks are simple," Rohr continued. "Gather intelligence on their defenses, identify vulnerabilities, and, if possible, establish a base for our main force and local resistance." One of the operatives asked, "Is there anyone among the Corrians who can assist us?" "The Corrians keep their kind enslaved through fear and brute force." Harper replied, "But our attacks in 1900 sparked rebellions across their empire. If we make contact with local resistance, it could be decisive." Rohr nodded. "Just remember, reconnaissance is the primary objective. Everything else is secondary." The saboteur team set out that night. Aboard a stealth ship that had managed to slip past outer Dominion patrols using technology reverse-engineered from captured Corran ships, the Corran had spent decades preparing for invasions, not targeted assassinations. Their defenses were designed to withstand vast armadas, not a few strategically placed human agents. 3 weeks of silence reigned, and then, finally, a powerful stream of heavily encrypted transmission came through, short, but containing exactly what they needed: weaknesses in Kester's defense network, patrol patterns, and, most importantly, confirmation of a nascent resistance movement among the planet's enslaved species. The attack could begin. A small fleet of human stealth ships slipped past the Dominion's outer patrols. The saboteur team had done their job well, identifying blind spots in the Corran sensor network. The humans moved through these gaps like ghosts, undetected, approaching the heart of the Dominion. Aboard the lead ship, Roar checked his equipment one last time. This would be the most dangerous. His life's mission, to infiltrate the most heavily guarded planet in the galaxy and assassinate the Emperor himself.